So if you have a business, you have a vision of some sort, you have a purpose, the why behind the product or service that you created. That is the story that you tell yourself. Why are we doing this? Why did we build this? Then you have to tell people about it. You have to market it. That is the story that you tell others. But you also have the story that others tell about you. The problem is you can't control that story. So what do you do? Well, luckily for you, that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Welcome to the Storytelling Lab, where filmmaking, brand, and business all collide. My name is Bennett, a filmmaker and an author, and for over 2 decades, I've studied how stories actually work on the screen, inside organizations, and most importantly, out in the real world. So each episode, I host one of the world's greatest storytellers to help break down the art and science of storytelling as a system, not just a skill. That means how stories create connection, how they move people emotionally, and ultimately how they drive action. So if you want to learn to tell stories that do more than just sound good, but they actually achieve something, then this, dear storyteller, is the show for you. What's up, storytellers? Welcome back to the Storytelling Lab podcast. Today is another solo episode with you and I, and the last time we met, it was episode 220, I believe, where we talked about mission. A few episodes before that, episode 216, we talked about the vision, the overall big future story that you're trying to tell, and then mission, how you're going to get there. Today, we're going to talk about brand. Now, I am sitting here in front of an iMac. To my left, I've got a MacBook Pro. Here at the desk, I've got an iPhone. My children use iPads. My wife uses the Apple Watch. Needless to say, we are an Apple family. I am an Apple user. I don't think that I could even go back to PC at this point. I don't know that I would know how to use it. Now, Apple and Steve Jobs famously created a very, very strong brand based on the identity of targeting creatives. If you remember those commercials years ago at this point about think differently, right? Or I'm a Mac and I'm a PC, and you had the nerdy kind of accountant looking type, no offense to accountants, especially mine who's helping me out in tax time right now, with the PC. And then you had the creative. It was like Justin Long was the actor who played that, the cool hip creative that was the Apple user. Well, that was part of the reason why that brand got so strong, but also there was a lot of features and distinct features that they used that made it identifiable for those who became Apple brand loyalists. And what I mean by that is, like, it's very user friendly. They're not always the best. I'm a filmmaker. I have lots of people that are like, yeah, the XYZ camera out there by this company is so much better than the iPhone. Why are you still using the iPhone? Well, 1, because I'm used to it. 2, because it's easy. 3, because it's compatible with all my other Apple devices. And even when there are things that are harder to churn through, like the proprietary cables and things like that they use, we are willing to do that because we are so locked into that brand. My daughter plays soccer. She's an Adidas girl. Well, she's right now trying on her first pair of Nike boots, and if those do well, and maybe she scores a few extra goals this season, she might become a Nike girl. Right now, she's an Adidas girl. So much of brand is about identity. Brand is the story that others tell about you. And today, we're going to break down how you can control that story, because ultimately, it's not up to you. But if the story that you tell yourself and the story that you tell others are aligned, that's the way you can influence the story that people tell about you. That's the way you can have control over it, is by making sure the overall brand narrative is aligned. So brand is not just your logo, your colors, your brand colors that you use, or the fonts that you use. It does have a little bit of that, and it certainly needs to be consistent, but it is so much more, and that's why we're going to dive deep into it today. Before we move forward, I want to read to you this quote that perfectly sums up what we're going to talk about today. This comes from my friend Paulie, actually, who used to be the CMO at Yeti. Now he's the CMO at AG1. You may have seen some of the marketing campaigns and initiatives that they've launched in the past year, which is his work, and they are all over the place. I love the stuff that they're doing. But he was on the podcast, on the Adweek podcast, Marketing Vanguard, and he had this great quote. I'm going to read it to you now. And it says, this is from his time at Yeti. It says, the value of this product is the brand. The minute you just become a commodity where people go, should I buy this cup or this cup? It's over. It's got to be, is it a Yeti or isn't it? If you come to a picnic or a tailgate or a barbecue and you pull out of a Yeti, or if you don't, it says something about you. And that's where you want to be as a brand. This is exactly the crux of it all. You want to be clearly identifiable and identified with by your people. You want to create evangelists and brand loyalists and brand advocates. And the way you do that is by connecting with them so that they feel like, in my daughter's case, an Adidas girl, or in my case, they feel like an Apple guy, right? Or a Yeti guy. This is what you're trying to do. And it takes time, and it takes alignment, and it takes consistency. So it is not just about how you doll up and decorate your brand or your business or your offer. It is about how you show up consistently in the world so that people can recognize that this is a you product or a you piece of marketing or a you campaign. Okay, so in the solo episodes that I've done this season, we're really focusing on this idea of the narrative operating system that I talk about in my upcoming book, The Chief Storytelling Officer. By the way, pre-orders are open now. The release date is officially August 25th. So mark that on your calendars. Pre-orders really, really help get it on bookstore shelves. So that would be great. If you want the book, please pre-order it. That is my ask of you. So in the book, we really dive deep into the narrative operating system, the NOS, the NOS. And just as a refresher from our previous episodes, when we think about where this fits into that system, vision is the story of where you're going, right? Mission is how you're going to get there. What is the plot? What is the sequence of events? And brand is how it feels to you and everyone else to be a part of that journey. If you remember back in episode 216 where we talked about vision, your vision has to feel to the user, to anyone in your community, like it is co-authored by them, that they can play a part or a role in that story. That's so important. So here in brand, it continues that thread. How do we create a brand that the user feels like they're a part of? That's what we're after. So brand is about the meaning, about the essence of your business or your product or your offer. It's not just about decoration. Marketing is how you grab attention, but branding is how you're going to form this deep, long-lasting relationship. I always like to think of it in a dating analogy, right? Marketing might be how you get the first date. If you're thinking about your online profile, it might be, your cool fish pics that you have or whatever. It might be how you show up, the quotes that you use, the interest that you put on your profile. If it's in real life, it might be the way you dress. It might be the how you talk and how you present yourself, how you speak when you're in public. Are you the funny guy? Are you whatever, right? That's how you grab the attention. It might get you that first date. But in order to get the second and third date and hopefully form into a relationship, you have to have brand. That means you have to be consistent. And in that brand are things like how you appear on the outside. Sure, that's a part of it. So if all of a sudden you presented yourself one way to me and you look very nice and dapper and clean cut, and then all of a sudden, as we started dating, you started showing up just disheveled and hair a mess and unkempt and ratty clothes, I'm getting a different message now, right? There's going to be a disconnect. On the other hand, that might have been what I fell in love with if that's how you presented. It's going to be the language that you use, right? If I liked you and you seem good on paper, then all of a sudden you curse like a sailor every time you're around my grandma, there's going to start to be a little bit of a disconnect. So brand is how you consistently encourage that loyalty and that reciprocation. You build that relationship, that trust, and therefore that allegiance, right? That connection that you have. Hey, we are in this story together. That is what we're after. So there are two pillars of building a brand that we're going to talk about today. One is your brand pyramid, and the other is your brand Bible. Just like a TV show has a series Bible where we can understand everything about the characters and the tone and the feel and the style and the story and all of that, you're going to have a brand Bible as well. Now, the brand essence is what we're going to do first, and we actually did this in an episode way back in episode 150. This was a couple of seasons ago in around 2024. So if you want to refer back to that, we are going to go through the brand pyramid, but we're going to skim past it pretty quickly because we've already touched on that. You'll still understand it, but if you really want to dive deeper into that, go back to episode 150, and then we're going to talk about the brand Bible. All right, so let's get into both of those pillars so that we can rest our brand on top of them, and they will have that secure foundation. Okay, so your brand pyramid closely resembles, if you've ever seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I've got it just off camera here, but I'm not going to grab it and pull it over there. I will put in the video, I'll put an example of it, but that is the pyramid that goes from, all the things that you need in life. So it starts with your basic physical fundamental needs, food, shelter, and water, all the way up to self-actualization, like what really makes you live in your your perfect self, what you're trying to achieve in life. But first and foremost, you have to make sure you have food and water and shelter, right? Then there's belonging, then there's emotional needs, et cetera, et cetera. So same thing here. We're going to start with the big fundamentals first and work all the way up to the tip top of that brand. So the first part of the brand pyramid is going to be your simple one-word North Star that guides all of your decisions. My mother is in real estate, and she's consistently been one of the top performers in her county of Eastern North Carolina, even though she started her career at age 50. She does not use social media. She does not know about any of the stuff that we talk about here on this show, but she does because she's naturally a storyteller. She inherently understands the relationship between provider and user, customer and client and the brand that you're building. So she does actually inherently get these concepts. She just doesn't call it the marketing terms. So when I asked her, for example, what's your one word guiding principle, without a hesitation of a second, she was like, service. I was like, well, tell me more about that. She was like, everything that we do at my company, because they were kind of the new kids on the block before they got bought out by the big corporate companies. That's good for her. They're still trying to keep that brand, right? That will be the corporation's job now. But how they separated themselves was by going above and beyond. And that means, like, sometimes my mom gets customers that they've already sold the house to, so the transaction is done, weeks later asking about something that they're unaware of, and she will still serve them. She will still go out there. Does she have to do that? Absolutely not. The closing has been completed, right? So sometimes that means jumping up and going and placing down a sign somewhere, even though it's not for your direct client, right? It might be for an agent that's part of the team. Like, everything she gives people that are moving there, the Chamber of Commerce tour of Little Washington, she calls it. She walks them around all of her favorite spots, and as someone who grew up there, she loves this place and wants them to love it. All right, service. Service guides everything that they do. That is what you want to start off with. What is the one single word that guides us? Is it connection? Is it family? Is it empowerment? Is it financial independence? Whatever it is that your business does, what is the one word true north that guides every decision? Okay. Next, you think of your brand persona. If your brand was a person, who would it be? Okay. This is really good to understand how you talk, how you show up, how you represent yourself. Okay. Because it is a relationship, and yes, you're a business, but if your business was a person, what would they look like? How would they act? How would they speak? Who would they collaborate with best and most effectively? Okay. Personify it. Put a person on that. This is a very common tactic in marketing too, brand personas, right? But think about not who you're selling to, but think about you. What is your persona? How do you show up in the world? Next, you identify two types of benefits that your brand has. Your emotional benefits, which means when you use my product or my service, how does it make you feel? It's as simple as that. It's so simple that it often goes overlooked because we think about, like, oh, well, here's how we separate ourselves. We have this feature and they have that feature. This feature's cooler. It's better. It's faster. It's cheaper, right? And not how do I feel when I use it, right? Do I feel more confident, sexier? Do I feel smarter? Do I feel safe, right? Do I feel capable? Do I feel educated? Like, it all depends on what you're providing, but I have to feel something, or else it's not going to matter if I use your product or the other, and then it's going to be a race to the bottom, like for price. I don't want to be in that race personally. If you do, no judgment, right? Plenty of brands, that's their thing. This is not, when you use storytelling as a strategy, what we're after. We're after finding our ideal audience that resonates with our brand the most. And to do that, you need to know what the emotional benefit is. Then there's the functional benefit. This is how you actually, like, what are the product features? What do I actually get and receive from your product or your service that's different than anyone else? But here's the thing. That still absolutely has to be tied back to that overall brand narrative. Because I believe this, because I want to make this change, because this is our mission, that's why we developed this feature. But you do absolutely still have to have functional benefits that are easy to notice and that are, like, tangible. Like, that immediately makes my life better. Like, I need to know that. Okay. And then lastly, the distinct attributes. So what exactly do we have that others don't have? Okay. When you break down your emotional benefits and your functional benefits, it should actually inform you of the answer to this one. Well, what are the things that stand out about us? And here's one little litmus test that you can use. If anybody can say it, any other company, it's not distinct. I feel like I shouldn't have to say that, but you do. People do it all the time. We focus on high quality. It's like, I'm dying to see the day where the brand that comes out and says, we don't really care about quality. Like we prioritize, like we aim for mediocre quality, right? We go above and beyond. We high quality, full service, yada, yada, yada. Like none of these things mean anything, to be honest. And even now, one of the things I see so much of is like AI solutions to take long form content like this podcast and break it down into short form content like Instagram Reels or TikToks or YouTube Shorts or whatever. It's so hard to determine which is best because so many of them are out there talking about their products and their offers in the same way. And that's why, to me, it feels like there's just what they call a sea of sameness. There's a million different options that I can use. And it's hard to determine which one I'm going to. And I'm probably not going to change. If I'm okay with who I'm currently with, I'm probably not going to change if there's nothing out there that speaks to me, that I can understand why that change would be better for me. So if anybody can say it, it is not a distinct attribute of your business or your brand. Okay, let's use an example. In the book, I talk about Patagonia. Patagonia has used storytelling for a long time. They create great films. They have made a lot of product decisions based off of their vision and how they view the world. Their vision is to use business to save the home planet. That is their vision. It has changed over the years, but that is a simple one that people can see themselves in the story and they can tie back every decision to that. So if we looked at their brand essence, this is just my perspective on it, and I could be wrong, or there's certainly wiggle room here. But if we looked at their one word, brand essence, I would say it's preservation. Their purpose, their guiding principle, their guiding North Star is to protect what already exists in both nature and in their products, right? So preservation. If I were to think about their brand persona, this might be a little bit on the nose, but I would picture the park ranger, not just because of the connection to the outdoors and wildlife, but yes, that's in there, but more so because the park ranger is the guide. They, Patagonia, are trying to guide other people, other like-minded people through this journey of preservation, of conservation. So they're the outdoorsy educator, the guide, the steward, if you will, of our natural environment. Okay. If we looked at their emotional benefits, like what do you get when you support them and you use them? You know, Patagonia is one of those brands that people are like, oh, you're a Patagonia wearer, a Patagonia person. You drive a Subaru. You wear a Rolex. You use an Apple or Adidas or Nike or whatever, right? So you know the type that is wearing Patagonia and shopping at REI, right? So their emotional benefits, what might that person be receiving? Not functionally, but emotionally. I would say, well, that connection with nature and that feeling good about taking a part in conservation, contributing to society and to nature. And I think this one's really important that gets overlooked, the belonging to a community of people that feel the same way. That part is so important. Is like, hey, yeah, we're all adventurers. We like to go out there and see the world, but we also care about it and we want to take care of it. So like we're bonded. That is one of the things that storytelling does most effectively, is bond us in groups. Their functional benefits, still tied to the brand narrative, are strength and durability, the high performance that they have, even in harsh conditions, like on top of mountains, versatility, sustainability, and one of the things that they really prioritized years ago was repairability. Like they had this New York Times ad that said, "Don't buy this jacket," which was their like number one seller at the time, which seems counterintuitive, but they're like, because we want to make it last. Like that's what our values, or what we stand for in our values, is sustainability. So that's when they started prioritizing making products, clothing, apparel that was more easily repairable. And then finally, their distinct attributes. What you get when you use them more than someone else is transparency in their supply chain. They made those choices years ago as well too. Made to last apparel, right? In this world of throw away everything, made to last, and then unwavering authenticity. Like even if they make mistakes, they are authentic. That's what you get when you use their brand. So go through that episode, revisit, go through that process, right, of the pyramid. Revisit episode 150 if you need to. really, really have to understand all of these things, or you're not going to have clarity when you start doing the next part of the exercise, building your brand Bible. Okay, so let's talk about this brand Bible. As I said earlier in the episode, it's just like your series Bible in a television show. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it is the master document that breaks down every aspect of this. Your characters and their descriptions and their journeys, where they've been, where they're going, your storyline, your narrative, what season 1 looks like, maybe even if we forecast into the future, or how we got to where we are. So all the storytelling stuff, all the character stuff, but also the tone. What does it feel like? Is it a Western? Is it a noir? What is the genre? What is the style? Are we doing it in, up close where you feel like you're in the scene and it's handheld camera work? Or is it fly on the wall? Or is it, big sweeping, beautiful shots? Like, what is the style? Like, every decision that you make to build something that complex, like a television series, has to be thought out. And it's very easy from episode to episode, because you have different writers and different directors and different editors, to start to veer from that, which will eventually create massive misalignment. It's easy to start to veer away from that alignment 1 degree at a time. That's why you have the Bible. Same thing with your brand. You need to build this brand Bible so that we all know what is a ABC company or XYZ organization's post sound like, how do they show up in the world, etc., etc. Let's dig into it. The first thing you have to identify when we're building our brand Bible is how we want to show up when we talk about ourselves, when we talk about our issues and the cause, the voice that you use. This can tie directly back to the brand persona that you identified in your brand pyramid. So one thing in the film and television world that we do is something called the voice test or the dialogue test. If you take away the name, the character name on top of any chunk of dialogue, and you can't identify just by the words used and the cadence and the expressions and the style, etc. of speech, if you can't identify who that character is, you have a voice problem, because each distinct character should speak in a different way. They should use different slang. They should have a different accent. Even the choice of the words they use in their sentence. Are they long and drawn out? Do they use these super long, complex words because they're a little bit pretentious and they're trying to show off and sound smart? Do they speak in grunts? One word, one syllable grunts? You have to think about this. And I should know, if I'm doing voice well, what character that is just based on the dialogue used. So similarly, if I can't tell, if I took your logo off of a marketing message or a video or a LinkedIn post or an email or whatever, and I couldn't tell that it was coming from you, that would be a problem. That's something you need to focus on. How do we show up? How do we talk? What is the language that we use? Next, tying right into that, is your visual identity, your design. This is where we start to talk about your logo, the font that you use, the colors that you use, right? Design is absolutely storytelling. Back in episode 218, I had on Shane Lucas on the show, who talked about, maybe episode 219, Shane Lucas, who's a designer. And we talked about how design is absolutely storytelling as well. So it reflects, in this case, not necessarily creates the story that you're trying to tell. It is a representation of yourself. In the book, I talk about the brand Liquid Death. Liquid Death is the sparkling water company that, if you look at the cans, it looks like it's a beer. That is on purpose. That is the reason that it is represented visually that way, is because that's who they are targeting. It got popular because the creator, the founder, was tired of going to concerts and music festivals. And I have seen this in real life. And if you're a concert goer who doesn't like to drink alcohol much anymore, you've seen this too. There's so much judgment around not drinking. It's wild, right? The stigma should be against drinking too much. But a lot of times when you go there, people are like, oh, why are you not drinking? Because either you're having a water. Some people have even put a lime in their water just to make it look like it's a cocktail. And people question that. It's weird. You don't even want to have the conversation, even if it's nothing like you're having problems with the substance, but you just don't want it that night. People have felt the need to explain themselves, and it doesn't feel good. So the founder decided to make a water for that situation, for those people, that looks cool. Simple as that. Looks edgy. Looks rock and roll. Looks punk rock, looks hip hop, looks like you're drinking a beer. And it might sound silly, But everywhere I go, at concerts, at music venues, they have that. And it's delicious too. You still got to have a great product. And I, for one, was not one of those sold on it, but I absolutely know friends who have come from the music world that have stopped drinking, and that is their go-to choice of water. That is not by accident. And if you look at their language they use and the colors they use and the design they use, it's all the same thing. Their brand is funny and out there, and it's rock and roll. That is their essence. And so they do that visually, and then they stand by it. Again, it is a reflection of the story. It is not creating the entire story. Okay, so we talked about voice, we talked about visual identity. Now let's talk about messaging. What are the words that we actually use to say? This is just as important. We identify with voice how we want to talk, how we want to show up. Am I like the funny friend? Am I the professional like educator? Like, who are you, right? Going back to the brand persona. When we talk about our messaging, one of the biggest things to create that community is a shared language. What are the actual words that you use? How do you describe things? We need a vocabulary, and the people in your space, in your sphere, your community as well, need to share in that language. That's one way communities get really, really strong, is we refer to things the same way. We have a shared language and a shared vocabulary. When you think about how you want to talk about yourself and your company and your market and your products and your services, that is extremely important. You all want to be singing from the same song sheet, right? You use the same notes. Here's our style, okay? One of the exercises that you can do, I have this in the book as well, is simply a this, not that exercise. When we think about how we want to show up, this is directly tied to voice as well. And what I mean by that is we want to sound fun but not silly, right? These are guardrails. We want to be like this, professional but not pretentious, right? Not like we're looking down on you, but we want to be a figure of authority, right? A lot of different ways that you can do that. You can try it yourself, but you're basically giving yourself this clear distinction of like where we fit in those guardrails. Think about the bowling alley, right? With the kids' guardrails that keep you right in that lane, because you don't want to veer outside of that. Again, we start to get to that misalignment. If you're like, all right, well, I like that you're confident, but this started veering into arrogance, and that didn't make me feel good. No, you're confident, and that's how you want to show up. But you got to make sure that you don't start to veer outside of those guardrails. Quick pause for a second. I just want to say, like, this work takes a while. This is why it's so important, and it needs to be done in the beginning or as you're building your thing. So often it tries to be done later as a decorative like add-on, and that is such a mistake, because someone said it best when I was talking about this in a workshop recently. Is like, the story that you're telling is already being told, whether you think you've controlled it or not, or whether you've intentionally built it or not. It's being told. So if you wait till later to start trying to add story on, especially in your brand, it might be too late, because there is already a story that people are telling about you. That is going to happen immediately. The sooner you can do that, even building it before you have something that is launching, is super, super important. So this is a lot. I don't expect you to listen to this episode and then all of a sudden have it as soon as I say bye-bye today. I want you to build it and go through these processes. Get the book when it comes out. It's a super quick read that is going to help you. Or shoot me an email in the meantime if you want to workshop it. I'm happy to do it. But you have to be intentional and sit down and do this work. All right, let's get back to the lesson. After you identify your voice, your visual identity, and your messaging, how you're going to talk about yourself, you have to understand that this is a living, breathing system. It is not static. It will change over time or evolve over time, and that's fine, because you're going to grow, hopefully, right? And also time is going to change. It might not make sense to be saying the certain things that you were at one point, because time changes, society changes, culture changes, right? Internally and externally. So you have to constantly evolve and have checkpoints to go through this. So you have to evolve with your audience as well. They're going to grow up. Your audience might have been young when you first started, and now they're growing up, and their priorities are changing, their perspectives are changing, and you must change with them or change audiences, right? The point is, change is inevitable. So you have to build this into the process as well. So two different ways you can do this. One, inspiration. You look around at what's going on, what's happening. Keep your fingers on the pulse of what's going on in your industry, but also outside your industry. It's very easy to look at people in your space and get caught in the trap of trying to replicate what they're doing without being intentional about if I'm supposed to do that or not. So sometimes looking at a landscaper telling stories about their business versus a storytelling expert might really show me something that I haven't thought of before. Like, oh, what if I approach my business from that way? So don't be afraid to look outside of your industry too, because it's real easy to keep this tunnel vision and these blinders on when you stay just in your industry. And also, you don't want to sound like everybody else. You don't want to fall into that sea of sameness trap. So look for inspiration out there. What's going on in the world? What are different people and organizations doing? What are different industries doing? And try to find inspiration as you evolve. And then secondly, the second device for evolution in this is reflection. You have to revisit every cycle, whatever you determine the cycle might be. Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? I think it shouldn't be yearly. That's a little too far. And see what has worked. What has resonated? What have people engaged with? What have they responded to? What has motivated action? You have to have a part of the process that consistently checks in with your performance, okay, and reads the data. You have to export and execute and publish consistently so you have data, but then you absolutely have to have a process in place to read that data and adapt and adjust as you need to moving forward. Okay, so let's recap before we go. Vision is what inspires you and inspires everybody else to jump on the ship and take part in this story that you are creating. Mission is what organizes everybody and understand and has them understand, like, well, what role am I playing in this story? And brand is what people remember and repeat. Right? The story that others tell about you. And you can only have any control or influence over that story if you do those first two things really well. So go back through, think about the brand pyramid, break it down. What is your brand essence? What is that one word? That is a good place to start if you don't have time to do anything else, because that will trickle down and inform everything else that you do. But you have to have clarity. And listen, if you have 7 things that you value, you don't really value anything. You can't do that. Yes, we all care about family, but that might not be the thing that drives you forward in every decision you make. Yes, we all care about community or success. A lot of these vague terms that we hear. Get clear, get specific, okay? Then think about who you are as a character. Okay, how am I going to show up? How do we talk? What is the style of clothes that we wear, metaphorically, maybe literally? And then think about what people would say about you at a party, okay? You don't have a lot of control over that unless you're consistently who you say you are. That's what brand is. If someone else were to describe you or your company or your product or your service, would what they are saying align with how you feel about yourself and how you try to show up in the world? And if they are, you're doing brand correctly. And if they're not, you've got some work to do. So join us next time on the Storytelling Lab, where we will continue to dig into your story and help you build storytelling as an entire system. My name is Bennett. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed that episode, do us a favor and subscribe to the podcast. If you're already a subscriber and you're enjoying the show, give us a review and let us know the value that you've gotten from it. We love to hear from our listeners and learn about the benefits that they're getting from the show. That's what fuels us, and that's what fuels the show. And if you've already subscribed and you've already reviewed it and you think there's someone else that would benefit from listening to this show, please share it with them. The more we grow, the more we can help you grow, and that's what we're here to do. Join us next time on the Storytelling Lab.